Welcome to the presentation Multilingualism and Open-mindedness in Secondary School Students. As we know, multilingualism is a common phenomenon in school contexts, which may bring both challenges and advantages to teachers and students. In this presentation, however, I would like to focus rather on the positive side of this phenomenon and advocate why it is worth promoting multilingualism in schools. To do so, I will share some findings of the UNSPROC research project, which, among other aspects, investigates how multilingualism can be linked to students' open-mindedness. First of all, I would like to clarify the central concepts and explain why I suggest looking at the connection between multilingualism and open-mindedness. Open-mindedness can be defined as open, unprejudiced, and positive attitudes towards diversity. It also concerns people's capacity to be open to different norms, values, and new experiences. Researchers suggest that open-mindedness is an important psychological factor in language learning, and it can give several advantages to language learners. For example, it can be positively linked to learners' cognitive intelligence and ability to learn, autonomous and motivated learning. Students with a high level of open-mindedness can also have a better developed emotional intelligence and communicative skills. They can also have better developed critical thinking and intercultural competence, and they also tend to use different learning strategies more frequently. Given this and other benefits of open-mindedness, in our quantitative study, we were interested to find out how multilingualism can be connected to the psychological trait in school students. The other central concept of our study is multilingualism, which can be considered as a societal as well as an individual phenomenon. As a societal phenomenon, multilingualism refers to linguistic diversity in a social group or a society, and as an individual phenomenon, it refers to a person's knowledge of two or more languages, regardless of their proficiency in these languages. The study was conducted in Norway, which can be considered as a truly multilingual country because it has two official languages, Norwegian and Sami, and two official variations of Norwegian, bokmål and nynorsk. According to our definition of individual multilingualism, all school students in Norway can be also considered multilingual. First of all, they learn two standard variations of Norwegian, bokmål and nynorsk. From grade 1, in school, they start learning English as their first foreign language. From grade 8, they can also decide to learn a second foreign language, and typically these languages are Spanish, German, or French, and around 75% of students decide to do so. Moreover, due to a similarity between Scandinavian languages, students in Norway can be also receptive multilinguals. This means that can they understand languages of neighbor countries, for example, Swedish and Danish. And in addition, students with migration background can speak languages other than Norwegian as their first languages or home languages. In our study, we take this linguistic diversity into account, and when exploring the connection between multilingualism and open-mindedness, we rather look at students' degree of multilingualism. We can operationalize this as the number of languages in their linguistic repertoire. Therefore, the main research question of our study is to what extent is students' open-mindedness is linked to the number of languages in their linguistic repertoires. Besides that, we also include a number of other variables which might help us better understand the connection between open-mindedness and multilingualism, and thus we introduce such variable as self-identification as multilingual. The fact that students know various languages and dialects does not guarantee that they identify themselves as multilingual, and to include the respondents' perspective to our study, we introduced this variable. We Also expected that such factors as learning an additional language at school, having friends with home languages other than Norwegian, students' migration background, and the experience of living abroad could also be connected to their open-mindedness. In total, almost 600 pupils from 7 schools participated in our study, and their mean age was 13, 14 years old, and they were all in year 8 of lower secondary school. As expected, most students were learners of an L3, and in our case, 85% of participants learned an additional foreign language at school. The data was collected with the UNSPRO questionnaire, which was specifically developed to explore multilingualism and multilingual identity in secondary school students. And please find more information and the questionnaire itself in a recently published article by our research group, which was published in the Language Learning Journal. Student open-mindedness in the questionnaire was explored with 10 Likert scale questions, which were developed based on an overview of other questionnaires. And among these questionnaires, we also looked at the multicultural personality questionnaire, which was developed by researchers from University of Bergen. For analyzing the data, we used SPSS program, and the construct open-mindedness in our study was approached as a dependent continuous variable. Since the sample size was large enough, we chose to run parametric tests to find the connection between open-mindedness and the number of languages. We ran an ANOVA test. We chose that this test because the amount of compared groups were more than 2, because most of students indicated that they know 3 or 4 languages. However, there were those who mentioned up to 9 languages in their linguistic repertoires. And among languages that students mentioned were languages that they study at school, 2 variations of Norwegian, bokmål and nynorsk, minority languages, and also other Scandinavian languages. And this data reflected the picture of language diversity in Norwegian schools that was presented earlier. To find the connection between open-mindedness and other factors, we ran independent samples t-tests, because the comparison in each case was between 2 groups, for example, between those who identify themselves as multilingual and those who do not, between students who learn a second foreign language at school and those who learn only English, etc. For t-tests, we also calculated Cohen's d, and this allowed us estimating the importance of each factor and comparing the effect size of the differences between groups. The effect size was equal to 0.2 was considered as small, 0.4 as medium, and 0.6 as large. And we received quite interesting and at some points unexpected results. An ANOVA test showed that there is a marginal but statistically significant link between the number of languages in students' repertoire and their open-mindedness. It is interesting to mention that students with more than 5 languages showed the highest level of open-mindedness, while students with only 2 languages showed the lowest level. However, a Tiurikova post hoc test did not indicate that the difference between groups was statistically significant, and therefore we can already conclude that while there is likely to be a positive connection between students' open-mindedness and number of languages, more research is needed here to understand this connection. As for the link between open-mindedness and other factors, we received quite interesting results as well. First of all, to our surprise, 67% of students reported that they consider themselves multilingual. This number is quite high in comparison to what we expected. And the result of the independent sample t-tests showed that the connection between this factor and open-mindedness is statistically significant. It was more than it was less than 0.05. Students who explicitly identify themselves as multilingual scored higher on open-mindedness than those who do not identify themselves as multilingual. Among other statistically significant factors, we also found that learning an L3 at school was an important factor. Our hypothesis that open-mindedness can be positively connected to L3 learning was confirmed, and we found out that students learning an additional language, foreign language at school, score higher on open-mindedness. Having friends with home languages other than Norwegian also showed a positive link to open-mindedness. And at the same time, to our surprise, such factors as migration background and experience of living abroad did not show any statistical significance in relation to students' open-mindedness. Coins D, which shows an effect size of the difference between groups, helped estimate which factors were more linked to open-mindedness. And we can see that having friends with home languages other than Norwegian had the strongest effect size, which can be estimated as large. This finding suggests that there is likely to be a large difference in open-mindedness between students who have friends speaking other languages and those who do not. The factor of learning an L3 at school showed a medium effect size, which also indicates a relatively strong link between open-mindedness and L3 learning. For self-identification as multilingual, the effect size was 0.3, which can be estimated as from small to medium. And as you can see, Collins D confirmed that the effect size was very small for migration background and experience of living abroad. What conclusions can we make from these findings? The first conclusion comes from the large effect size of the factor having friends with home languages other than Norwegian. On the one hand, this finding might suggest that more open-minded students are more likely to have friends with different cultural and linguistic background. But on the other hand, this finding can also indicate that supporting and promoting linguistic diversity in schools can be beneficial for enhancing students' open-mindedness. Regardless of migration or non-migration backgrounds, regardless of experience of living abroad, all students can benefit from working and interacting with peers who speak other languages. The next findings suggest that students' individual multilingualism developed either through language learning or supporting languages that they already know can also be beneficial for developing their open-mindedness. However, what also seems to be important here is student self-identification as multilingual. It also has a positive link to students' open-mindedness. Therefore, we suggest that introducing activities that would help students not only enrich their linguistic repertoires, but also promote their multilingual identity, their self-identification as multilingual, are likely to be beneficial for promoting their open-mindedness. And summing up, this quantitative study suggests that supporting linguistic diversity in school and promoting students' multilingualism both are likely to be positively connected to the development of students' open-mindedness. Moreover, given the potential advantages of open-mindedness that have been mentioned earlier in this presentation, our findings can also suggest that promoting multilingualism may have even bigger pedagogical implications. For example, we can assume that multilingualism may contribute to promoting students' communicative skills, critical thinking, and intercultural competence. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I will be happy to answer your questions.